All right, I'll give you 1 to 10. I'll give you 4, and you take 3. Ugh. Oof. It's 1 to 10. Seven. One. 6. 5. Any 3. Make sure you put the number. Well, 7 is easy. 1 is a little lengthy, but it's easy. And 6 is easy too. They're all easy. Yeah.
Can we see the questions, Your Excellency?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'll put them on the board. I thought this was that crazy. So, number 1 is, what is the objectum formale quod? Quod of any science. And objectum formale quo and what are these in sacred theology? Number 5 is give the definition of apologetics. And what is its objectum formale quod? I'll just put OF quod and OF quo. Number 6 is explain the method of apologetics. And number 7 is what is religion objectively considered? And subjectively considered. What was that? Oh.
Will we be having class?
Yes. So I'm showing that we left off on page 305, I believe. Yes. So the definition of mystery, mystery in general is defined as a secret and hidden reality or truth exceeding our knowledge, although deserving of our knowledge. So there's certain things that are mysterious to us, but are not worth knowing. See? If it is not in some manner above our knowledge, it would not deserve to be called a mystery. So it has to be, some things may seem unknown, other things are mysteries. That is, we don't know exactly how it works or its interior. Say like some of the things in outer space. See, we're not sure how everything functions there, or this, that, or the other thing. People discover things every day, but whether they're worth knowing is a whole other thing. But some people think they're worth knowing, so weather patterns or that would be worth knowing. There's many natural mysteries. Therefore, the various ways of calling something a mystery are said in accord with how certain things exceed knowledge. Mystery is essentially and adequately divided into natural and supernatural, or it is called natural inasmuch as it can be known without supernatural revelation, at least with regard to its existence. And it's called supernatural inasmuch as without supernatural revelation, we cannot know of it even as regards its existence. All right, so look at the schema. Natural is that which can be known without revelation, at least with regard to its existence. So that's subdivided into de facto, hidden as regards its existence, and hidden as regards its intimate essence. So you can know that something exists, but you don't know its essence, what it is, or how it works, and so forth. So existence is subdivided of the physical order, of the intellectual and moral order. How the brain communicates with the soul, for example, is mysterious. In other words, how you go from a phantasm, which belongs to the brain, to something immaterial that is a concept. That's mysterious. It has to be. You see the effect of it, but somehow there's a communication between body and soul there. Or of the intellectual and moral order, so a physical order, the outer space stuff. We just said, and hidden as regards to its intimate essence relatively in relation to the human intellect, absolutely for any created intellect whatsoever. So something can be relatively hidden as to its essence. That is, it could be known, it could be figured out, but it is just not known yet. Absolutely, that is something that is cannot be understood by any created or creatable intellect whatsoever. And then you have subdivisions there of the physical order. For example, what things exist in the depths of the earth or of the sea. Intellectual or secrets of the heart, secrets of a given religious society. Relatively in relation to the human intellect in the created order, what is the intimate nature of physical energy, nutrition, sensation, intellection, free choice, transitive causality, etc. Absolutely, for in the uncreated order, the intimate reconciliation of the naturally knowable attributes of God, justice and mercy of God, for example. That's always how does that work? Now, supernatural mystery, which indeed cannot be known without revelation, even with regard to its existence, broadly speaking, which do not remain obscure after revelation, but are easily understood. Example, divine decrees revealed regarding some easily intelligible fact. I think that for example, that somebody might be going to heaven, or something like that. In other words, that it's a divine decree, but it's intelligible. So you wouldn't know it unless it was revealed, but it's intelligible. Intrinsically supernatural mysteries such as those of the Trinity, the Incarnation, and of the life of grace. Right? So natural mysteries are hidden things that nevertheless can be known without supernatural revelation, at least as regards their existence. Natural mystery is subdivided inasmuch as it exceeds our knowledge in two ways. One, as regards to the fact of existence, although this fact of itself is naturally knowable. Two, not as regards the fact of its existence, but regards to its intimate essence. So we saw that. I don't think we need to read all of this. It's really an explanation of what we just said. I think you can read that on your own if you're interested in it, but I think you understand the division. All right. If you go to page 308, however, supernatural mysteries are those things that without divine revelation cannot be known by any created intellect, even as regards their existence. These supernatural mysteries are subdivided into mysteries, broadly speaking and strictly speaking, and we saw that. And if you go to the next paragraph on 309, however, supernatural mysteries, and this is what we're principally concerned with, properly speaking, are those that remain obscure even after revelation has been handed on. The reason for this obscurity is because they exceed the created intellect, not because of their contingency and future character, but rather because of their intrinsic supernaturality, or as the First Vatican Council says, because by their very nature they exceed the created intellect, even creatable intellect. So just as the sun exceeds the power of your eyes to comprehend it, you know it exists because you occasionally get a flash in your eyes, or you look up and there's the sun up there, but you look away right away, right? But if you were to stare at it to try to comprehend it, you will need a cane, a white cane, and you see. So as everything has a capacity, every natural thing has a capacity, and so the sun exceeds the capacity of our eyes. So they are mysteries that pertain to the intimate life of God, that is, to the deity according to its most proper formal character, as the deity, or to the participation in this intimate life, that is, grace and glory. So the workings of actual grace, sanctifying grace, and glory, that is, beatific vision, those are all supernatural mysteries that cannot be completely understood. Indeed, God is naturally knowable according to the common and analogical notions of being. That's what you do in the proofs of the existence of God. Truth, intelligence, will, and so forth, but not according to the most proper and intimate formal character of the deity. So not as he is in himself. That's the beatific vision. And even then you don't comprehend it. All right. And he talks about things that pertain to that in the small print. So if you go to the next page, on the intelligibility of the mysteries and on their interconnection, since the rationalists deny the intelligibility of supernatural mysteries a priori, that means in principle, it's intrinsically impossible. A priori means before experience. A posteriori means after experience. So get used to that. You'll see that a lot. So a priori means in principle, in theory. You cannot do it, you see. And hence, do not wish to examine the fact of revelation. We must discuss what the Church teaches concerning the intelligibility of mysteries, strictly speaking. All these supernatural mysteries, which are per se objects of faith, are proposed by the Church as being truths that are obscure, incomprehensible, and indemonstrable, though not unintelligible. See, it's not as if you're saying 2 + 2 = 5. That's unintelligible. Also, they are handed on not as a heap of disparate truths, but instead as interconnected and properly as a determinate body of doctrine. See, so they're all interrelated, obviously. The First Vatican Council says, we believe that what he has revealed is true, not because the intrinsic truth of things is recognized by the natural light of reason, but because of the authority of God himself who reveals them. So we don't believe them on the fact that we are convinced of them because we see the rationality or the reasonableness of them, but because God has revealed them. Nevertheless, if reason illumined by faith inquires in an earnest, pious, and sober manner, it attains by God's grace a certain understanding of the mysteries, which is most fruitful from the analogy with the objects of the natural knowledge and from the connection of these mysteries with one another and with man's ultimate end. In other words, by analogy, we can have a certain amount of knowledge of these things that are supernatural mysteries. So that's, all theology is based on analogy. So that's why you study analogy in philosophy, because the whole thing is, well, creatures are this, creatures are the effect of God, therefore you're going to see some of God in the creature. That's effectively, all theology is doing that. See, and you're explaining even the attributes of God through analogy to created things. Hence, something must be said, A, about the intelligibility of the mysteries, and B, about their interconnection. The supernatural mysteries are incomprehensible and indemonstrable, but testimony about them is analogically intelligible. Indeed, incomprehensibility is not the same thing as unintelligibility. That's very important to understand. You see, the rationalists say that, oh, they're unintelligible. It doesn't make any sense. None of it makes any sense. So the mysteries are not unintelligible. Something is incomprehensible when it cannot be totally comprehended or penetrated by our intellection. For example, the naturally knowable attributes of God, such as omnipotence, are incomprehensible, but are nonetheless analogically intelligible. That God is all-powerful. We cannot totally understand that, but we do know that it's true, and we do understand it to a certain extent. Nay, they are demonstrable. Something is indemonstrable when it cannot be deduced in a necessary manner from the evident principles. In other words, we cannot prove the Trinity, or from the facts of experience. Now, that's the difference between an a priori demonstration. An a priori demonstration, it goes from evident principles to conclusions. An indirect, a posteriori, it goes from experience. You see, all birds have feathers, but everything that has feathers flies. This is not true. Then you say all birds fly. And that's not true either. But that's a demonstration from experience, and that's an a posteriori demonstration. Nor manifested by reductio ad absurdum. Do you remember that from logic? Where it's a very powerful, it's one of the most powerful demonstrations, and that is that, if you say that, if you say that there is discontinuity of doctrine and morals, etc., the teaching of the church, or all of the aspects of the church, if you're saying that that is discontinuity, then you must say that those who have promulgated it do not have the authority of the church. If you say that they have the authority of the church, then you must say that the church is defected, which is against the faith. That's a reductio ad absurdum. See, so then how that the bells go off. See, when you have an absurd conclusion, then that would be maximally absurd because it's against the faith. But if you end up even with something that is naturally absurd, that there's no causality, for example. You know, the billiard balls do not move with causality. That's naturally absurd. See? So that's known as reduction to the absurd. It's a very powerful argument against your adversary. It's just like a nuclear bomb. If you're correct, it levels everything. See? So, but that's really you know, the arguments in you know, a lot of the polemical arguments that we use, and that you would be obliged to deny the faith if you admit this as true Catholicism. Thus, something that is only probable can in no way be demonstrated. Demonstration means you prove it, but it nevertheless is intelligible. So many things in theology, you know, have the label of probable, a probable opinion. Probable in theology, by the way, does not mean that it. Show you the. Supposed to stay on this blackboard. Okay, so you get any kind of thesis, any kind of idea. If if certitude is absolutely that's true, or absolutely not. See, that's certitude. See, doubt is I don't know. Both sides pull you equally. Opinion means this side is pulling you more than that side, but it admits that the other side could be true. See? Because you're not totally there, but you're not in doubt either. That's opinion. All right, so you might have a probable opinion. Probable, in moral theology, I have probable reasons and all, means provable. In other words, that you have a good reason for thinking it, but it doesn't move you all the way to this point. It doesn't mean probable in the common sense that we use it, that, well, it's probably true. It has a sense of provable, see, that you have a good reason to think it. And that's in moral theology. If you have some good reason to say, I can do this, then according to probabilism, you can do it, see. Where in those cases where you can use probabilism, you can't use probabilism, for example, with regard to the validity of the sacraments. So you should know that from, if you don't know it now, you will know it from moral theology. All right, and other things that you can't use probabilism in. But you know, day-to-day moral problems, you can use probabilism, unless you're one of the other schools. If you are a probabiliorist, then you have to find the more probable. In other words, what has the weightier reasons. If you're an equiprobabilist, that's St. Alphonsus, then he would say that if your concern is whether the law exists, then you can act in favor of what you want to do. But if the question is whether you are excused from the law and you only have a probable opinion, he says no. That's equiprobabilism, St. Alphonsus Liguori. So, did you study those yet?
I don't think we've done those yet.
Where do you do those? All right, but you'll see those. That's very important for cases. You get a lot of cases of moral cases. We get them all the time on the internet. People write in and ask us all kinds of things. and they think this is like the Vatican. They get even the priests in Australia and all. They think I know everything, and all I do is go to the books. I mean, I don't know, any more than they do. Well, a little bit, but I always have to look it up to make sure. So anyway, those are the different types of demonstration. Thus, something that is only probable can in no way be demonstrated, but it nevertheless is intelligible. Something is unintelligible when it is opposed to intellection, either because it is obviously absurd, a square circle, for example, or because it is utterly meaningless, like words that are uttered accidentally without interrelation among them. So somebody who is babbling because he's drunk or something like that. According to the Church, supernatural mysteries are incomprehensible. They cannot be demonstrated either a priori or a posteriori or through a reductio ad absurdum. Nevertheless, testimony concerning them is not unintelligible. Indeed, it is not evidently absurd. What the predicate signifies is understood, as well as what the subject signifies, and the verb is, that is, the existence of the mystery, that this mystery exists, is affirmed by God. So God is three persons in one God. That's all intelligible to us. We know what person means, we know what God means, we know what is means. But how, etc., the intimate connections, etc., are not known to us. I mean, they are beyond us. The connection of the predicate and the subject remain inevident, and hence it is said, faith is not of things seen. In other words, if I say the sky is blue, see, that is intelligible by just looking at the sky. So the connection between subject and predicate is verifiable by natural means. But the connection between, say, Christ is God and man. See, the connection is not seen. That is, we don't see how that is possible by nature. So therefore, faith is not of things seen. See, so we believe on faith, and that is to take someone's word for it, and the evidence for it is as strong as both the veracity and the knowledge of the person speaking. Those are the two elements that would cause faith. So if you're on a jury and you hear somebody testify, and he sounds like an idiot, or this contradictions, see, then he loses his credibility, that is his veracity. And so then you're not going to take very seriously what he says, see? Or that he doesn't know what he's talking about. He might be, perfectly truthful, but he lacks knowledge. He saw an accident from way down the block, it's all right in front of you, you see. Then you're not a worthy witness. See, so you lose credibility that way. But God obviously is supremely credible, and obviously God knows all things. So that's but you need a magisterium, an infallible magisterium, which teaches you what God is saying. That's where the church comes in. So that's why the church's proposition is conditio sine qua non. In other words, God does not speak to us directly, only he speaks to prophets directly, but he does not speak to us directly. So there is an agency in the world to promulgate his doctrines infallibly. And without that, you would have the chaos of Protestantism. That's absolutely necessary for the unity of faith, is that there be a single teaching authority which has the authority of God and the assistance of God to promulgate doctrines. And that's what has led to the unity of faith of the Catholic Church, and that is why that's what the modernists are destroying. So, and that's why we're doing what we're doing. So, All right, how's the time? 5 more minutes. So thus frequently an unintelligent student affirms the demonstration of some conclusion on account of the authority of his or her teacher, and nonetheless this proposition is not entirely unintelligible for him or her. Indeed, this is because, just as in the case for the nature of intellection, intelligibility too is predicated analogically in various ways and is more or less perfect, thus giving rise to a number of degrees: divine intellection, angelic intellection, human intellection, and in the last, intellection of principles, of conclusions, and of sufficiently credible testimony. All right, so those are the levels of intellection. All right, so the mysteries are analogically intelligible in the divine testimony, and subject and predicate are analogically intelligible for us. So God is Father. You see, we understand the fathership of God by human fathership. See, that's analogically intelligible for us. For God, in revealing, in order to express his testimony, makes use of our naturally acquired notions, which directly express something created and analogically express something uncreated. God the Son, God the Holy Ghost, procession, generation. So all of those things are used in the Trinity. For instance, the notion of paternity comes analogically express the divine paternity. That's why St. Paul says all paternity in heaven and on earth is named for God, Father. And likewise, the natural notion of filiation comes to analogically express the divine filiation of the second person of the Trinity. Similarly, the notion of adoptive filiation comes to analogically express our supernatural filiation. It is a question of an analogy of proportionality, not merely a metaphorical one when God is called a sun or fire. Like Christ is called the Son of Justice, Sol Justitiae. That's metaphorical. But rather in a proper one. Do you remember the difference between metaphorical analogy and proper analogy? Okay, proper analogy is when I get these in looks. When the ratio is in both properly. In other words, that is properly in a father, a human father, and is properly in God. But the manner in which they are in one or the other is different. So, a metaphorical one is where the ratio is only properly in one and only by imitation in another. So the queen bee of the office is a metaphor. The ratio of bee is not in the woman's nature. She's not a bee, but she's like a bee in a certain way. In other words, everybody does what she says. So that's a metaphor. So there are many metaphors in sacred scripture. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, God is angry. God repents of what he has done. For example, repents of having created man. That's all metaphorical, because God never changes his mind. In the anger of God, God doesn't have emotions. Many other metaphors are used. And that's because the Hebrews, they're especially evident in the Old Testament, and the Hebrews were, like all the whole human race, was very much attached to material things, and everything had to be explained in a material manner. And that's why they had all of the Levitical laws, that by obedience to these material laws, that they might learn obedience to God and humility, etc. Because, as I said, it was pure obedience. There was no sense to it. See, that they couldn't do this or couldn't do that. So, that's why Adam and Eve had pure obedience too. That's St. Augustine. They had pure obedience because it was a delicious looking fruit. It was a very nice tree. You see, that was the whole temptation. See, what's wrong with this? Why doesn't he want us to eat it? And the rest is history, as you know. That's why you're sitting here trying to learn this. All right. Today is September 9th. All right. So stop me if you don't understand something. There's a lot of philosophy in this. Again, that's why you learn philosophy. There's going to be a lot more philosophy until we're attacking all kinds of philosophical systems in here. Almost halfway through this first volume. Second volume is easier. Not as much fun. In nomine Patris et Filii Spiritus Sancti, amen. Subtuum praesidium confugimus sancta Dei genitrix nostros deprecationis in specias in necessitatibus sed periculis cunctis libera nos semper virgo gloriosa benedicta. Amen. Nomine Patris et Filii Spiritus Sancti, amen. Okay.
May I erase this, Excellency?
Yes. What do you have now?